Let me start by saying that I live a pretty so-called straight-edge lifestyle, no wild partying, no mind-altering substances. So I can say with absolute certainty that what I saw and heard last New Year's Eve wasn't some drunken hallucination. It was real. Every bit of it. I live on the outskirts of your typical small southern town, the kind where the main attractions are a diner and a gas station. A few of my friends live even farther out, deep in the boondocks, where the only way in or out is through dark, winding country back roads. One of them, Darren, lives with his family in one of the wealthier neighborhoods hidden away beyond those roads. Every year, his family throws a big New Year's Eve party, inviting all their friends, including me. It's always a night to look forward to, and I can't help but get a little excited when I see that formal invitation from Darren's parents in the mail. Winters in the South are unpredictable at best. One day it's mild and breezy, the next it feels like the cold has crept in all at once. That year, the real chill didn't settle in until just a few days before New Year's Eve. I remember the way the icy air bit through my jacket as I gripped the wheel, navigating the uneven, pothole-ridden country road leading to Darren's house. The ride was anything but comfortable. Normally, I avoid using my brights. I can't stand when other drivers blind me with theirs, but on that road, in that pitch-black darkness, they were a necessity. Even then, the winding path ahead was barely visible, swallowed up by the dense tree line pressing in from both sides. The road itself was empty, with no houses or streetlights, just one exception. A lone shack sat tucked away in the woods, the kind that looked long abandoned, weathered by time and neglect. But every now and then, when I passed, I'd catch a faint glow from inside, flickering like a distant memory that refused to fade. A few minutes into the drive, on a rare straight stretch of road, my headlights caught something ahead, a flash of white against the surrounding darkness. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, but as I got closer, the shape became unmistakable. It was a person. A woman stood completely still at the edge of the tree line, her back to the woods, not moving, not even flinching. She wasn't trying to hide, just standing there as if she had been waiting for something, or someone. She wore a flowing white dress or gown, far too thin for the biting cold. I kept my brights on out of caution, but the intense glare off the fabric made it impossible to make out any details. Her face, her features, anything. As I passed, a wave of relief washed over me. At least she hadn't stepped into the road, forcing me to stop. But that relief was quickly replaced by unease. Should I have stopped? Should I have asked if she needed help? Maybe she was just another guest trying to find her way to Darren's party. But it wasn't until I glanced in my rearview mirror that a chill ran down my spine. In the red glow of my taillights, I saw her move, or rather she didn't move, but she had turned. She was still rooted in place, yet her body had shifted to face me as I drove away. Just standing there, watching. Yeah, no way was that a fellow party guest. And in that moment, I was glad I wasn't the kind of person who stops for strangers on dark, empty roads. The rest of the drive was uneventful, and I arrived at Darren's without issue, pulling into the gravel circle alongside a dozen or so other cars. His house sat in a large clearing surrounded by forest, and like every year, the party raged on well past midnight. We watched the ball drop in New York, then celebrated again when our own time zone hit 12. One by one, guests began to trickle out, saying their goodbyes until only a handful of us remained. As one of Darren's closer friends, I stuck around to help clean up. Something of a tradition for me. By the time I finally stepped outside, my car was the only one left in the driveway. Sliding into the driver's seat, I turned the key and a warning light blinked on, low tire pressure. My car's old enough that it doesn't tell me which tire, just that something was off. I didn't panic. This kind of thing always happened when the first real cold snap hit after a warm spell. I figured I'd make it home fine. But as I sat there letting the engine warm up, an uneasy thought crept in. That woman. Was she still out there? Had anyone else seen her? There was another way home, a longer route that avoided the dark back road entirely, but it would add at least 20 extra minutes to my drive. And at this hour, with the risk of drunk drivers, I wasn't keen on taking chances. I exhaled, gripped the wheel, and made my decision. I'd suck it up and go back the way I came. I really wish I hadn't taken that road. Not even a few minutes in, I knew something was wrong. I could feel it, subtle at first, a shift in the car's movement. Then I could hear it, a sickening sound like bare metal grinding against pavement. My stomach clenched. Slowly, my car lost momentum until it rolled to a dead stop in the middle of the pitch-black road. "This is different," I muttered, my voice barely above a whisper. My mind raced. Did my tires just fall off? Against every instinct screaming at me to stay inside, I had no choice but to check. Stupidly, So stupidly, I turned the engine off and stepped out, shutting the door behind me. At once, the car's automatic lights faded, plunging me into total darkness. The kind so thick it felt suffocating. With trembling hands, I fumbled for my phone, flipping on the flashlight. A weak, bluish beam cut through the black as I stepped closer to the front tire. Then the next, and the next. My breath hitched. Every single one of my tires had been shredded. Not punctured, not slashed, but torn apart as if something had raked massive, jagged claws through the rubber. I swallowed hard, trying to reason with myself. Maybe one had a blowout and the rough road somehow made it worse? But all four? No, that wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. But could it have been? I stood frozen, my flashlight shaking slightly in my grip. The silence around me felt heavier now, pressing in from the endless void of trees. No other cars. No distant headlights. No signs of life. Even on New Year's Eve, no one would be out here at this hour. I reached for my phone, desperate to call a tow truck. A friend. Anyone. No signal. Of course not. Not out here in the middle of nowhere. I was stranded. And I wasn't alone. Just as I reached for the car door, the wind died. The barren tree branches went still. Even the faint rustling of nocturnal creatures, the distant hoot of an owl, the scampering of unseen critters, vanished. The silence was absolute. I froze. I had never heard anything like it before. It wasn't just quiet, it was unnatural, suffocating, like the whole forest was holding its breath. Then a twig snapped somewhere in the trees. I spun toward the sound, heart pounding. Something was moving. Slowly. Deliberately. Without thinking, I shut off my phone's flashlight, plunging myself into complete darkness. The air around me felt thick, pressing in, my ears straining to pick up any sign of what was out there. Leaves rustled, steady, careful footsteps, not the erratic scurry of a small animal. A squirrel? A deer? No. This was the kind of silence that only happened when prey knew a predator was near. And then, "I see you." The words were barely above a whisper, soft and deliberate, yet they slammed into me like a punch to the gut. My stomach dropped. My breath stopped. I couldn't even scream. It was a woman's voice. Calm, devoid of anger or menace. And somehow that made it worse. She was close. Maybe 15 feet away, hidden somewhere in the dense, suffocating dark. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to run, to do something, but I was paralyzed. A lump lodged itself in my throat. I wanted to disappear, to curl into the dirt and just cease existing. Then, "Can you see me? Are you still watching? Hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to press the bell icon." A second time. The same unsettling calmness. The question jolted me back to reality. Fight or flight kicked in, but I was disoriented, blind in the darkness. I fumbled with my phone, desperate to regain my bearings, my fingers trembling as I switched the flashlight back on. The beam sliced through the night, and there she was, standing at the edge of the tree line. The woman in the white gown. Except now I could see her. The gown was filthy, streaked with dark stains that looked almost black in the harsh light. Her skin was ghostly pale, stretched tight over sharp, skeletal features. Strands of matted, gray hair hung limply past her elbows. But it was her face that sent ice through my veins. Half of her jaw was gone, as if something had torn it clean off. Yet somehow, impossibly, she was trying to smile. I stood there too long, staring, unable to process what I was seeing. Then finally, instinct won. I turned and ran. I didn't think. I didn't look back. I just hauled ass down the road, straight toward Darren's house, praying to God I wasn't being followed. The shack I had mentioned earlier was down the opposite direction, closer than Darren's house. A fleeting thought crossed my mind. What if she lives there? I didn't have time to wonder. Behind me I heard it. The sharp snap of twigs. The rustling of dead leaves. She was chasing me. She was chasing me. Panic surged through me, but adrenaline was on my side. I pushed harder, my legs burning as I sprinted down the road. I didn't dare look back. I just ran. Darren's house came into view, and I ignored the rest of the neighborhood, going straight for the front door. I pounded on it with both fists, my breath coming in ragged gasps. "Open up. Please open the door." It felt like an eternity before it finally swung open. Darren's mother stood there, her eyes widening at the sight of me. Without hesitation, she pulled me inside, shutting and locking the door behind me. I was shaking, struggling to get the words out as I told them everything. The woman, my shredded tires, the chase through the woods. Darren and his father listened, their faces grim, while his mother tried to calm me down. They didn't question me. They didn't brush it off as exhaustion or paranoia. Instead, they offered to let me stay the night while they called the police in a tow truck. I didn't hesitate. I agreed before even thinking to call my own family. The police said they would search the area along the road that night. They told me I could retrieve my car and make a statement the next day. But right now, I just wanted this night to be over. Darren's family set me up in the guest room, and the moment I hit the bed, exhaustion pulled me under. Or so I thought. Sometime later, I woke up to a soft tap against the second-story window. I stiffened. The room was dark, save for the dim glow of the digital clock on the nightstand. I turned my head slightly, just enough to see the time. 3:12 a.m. I lay there completely still. None of the windows in the room had blinds. I knew that. I also knew I wasn't going to look. Then I heard it. A voice. Her voice. "I see you." My stomach twisted into a knot so tight I could barely breathe. She had followed me, chased me all the way here. And now she was outside, throwing rocks at the window, trying to get my attention. If I wasn't going to look before, I sure as hell wasn't going to now. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stared at the ceiling, every muscle locked in place, counting down the seconds until sunrise. When morning finally came and Darren's family woke up, the woman was gone. We stepped outside together, my heart still hammering in my chest. The police arrived not long after, and they searched the yard around where I had heard the voice. That's when Darren's father found it. A large, rusty knife. It didn't belong to their family. The police suspected it was what she had used to slash my tires. Which meant she had followed me long before I even knew she existed. She had been at the party, watching, waiting, and I had been her target the entire time. Later, Darren's parents called around, asking other guests if they had noticed anything strange that night. One of their friends admitted that, at some point during the party, they had seen someone in a white dress walking around outside. They hadn't thought anything of it. People had been coming and going all night. They assumed she was just another guest. When I gave my statement to the police, I made one request: check that shack on the road. I had a gut feeling. She had something to do with it. They followed up later with an update. No one was living there. No signs of recent habitation. But the surrounding woods? Littered with gutted, decaying wildlife. The woman herself was never found. Which, of course, only left more questions. The most terrifying ones? How did she track me down so fast after I left the party? And if she was missing so much of her face, how was she able to speak so clearly? Despite everything, I'll still be going to Darren's house for New Year's Eve this year. But this time, I'm carpooling. And I'm taking the long way around.